Hello, my name is Avi Alprente, and welcome back to the Light of the Torah. The next Torah portion which we will be discussing is Parshat V'Zot HaBracha. It's important to note that V'Zot HaBracha isn't read on a normal Shabbat, rather it's read on Simchat Torah. Simchat Torah is the holiday in which we celebrate the cycle of the Torah readings. We read V'Zot HaBracha, and then we immediately start Sefer Bereisheet, from the end to the beginning. And we do that every year. Now, last time we spoke about Parshat Ha'azinu, and how Moshe Rabbeinu had a split second of a fall, and that is what led to the tragedy that befell him, and it resulted in him not being allowed into the land of Israel. And V'Zot HaBracha is all about his final blessing to the Jewish people. He said in Parshat Ha'azinu, a song, a poem, that he was basically condemning the Jewish people before anything they did wrong in the future, and now he's leaving them off with a blessing. And he goes tribe by tribe, and based on their strengths, based on the region that they're going to live in, he blesses each group. It correlates slightly to the blessings that Yaakov Avinu gave to his 12 sons way back at the end of Sefer Bereisheet. At the end of V'Zot HaBracha, after all of the blessings, we see Moshe actually going up to Har Nevo, which is where he passes away. And the pasuk says, "Vayamot sham Moshe, Eved Hashem, Eretz Moav, Al Pi Hashem." Now, I had two questions on this pasuk. It's a very weird verse. We know, first of all, the verse translates to, "And Moshe died there, the servant of God, in the land of Moab, by the words of God." Now, again, the phrasing is weird. There are two logical questions that we have to ask. First of all, we know that Moshe is God's servant. He dedicated his entire life to God's work. It's not the first time that we note that Moshe is Eved Hashem. As a matter of fact, in the beginning of this week's Parsha, it says that Moshe was Isha Elohim, a man of God, God's agent. So why are we noting again, right when he dies, that he was a servant of God? And the second thing is Al Pi Hashem. It seems kind of odd. Of course, anybody that passes away, it is because God decreed that. It's almost unnecessary. It's extraneous. It doesn't need to be there in the verse. So why is it there? Now the commentaries explain that the reason that it says Eved Hashem, that we refer to Moshe here as a servant of God, is because even in his death he was serving God. Meaning, he died, he went up the mountain as God said, and he died just as God had intended. There are a bunch of midrashim that basically explain that Moshe was begging for God to let him into the land, not to have him pass away. He was doing teshuvah, and it got to a certain point where Moshe knew that if he had continued to beg Hashem would have had to let him into the land, and he stopped. He realized that it was his time at 120 years old. That is what God intended, and he needed to follow through with what Hashem was saying. And that even in his death, he was serving God. And I believe that is the ultimate tshuva. I believe that is, obviously last week, we see the recounting of the punishment that Moshe received for desecrating God's name, essentially, amongst the people by hitting the rock twice instead of speaking to it. And we asked the question, okay, why couldn't he do tshuva? Well, the answer is he did, by passing away. And that leads into the answer to the next question, which is Al Pi Hashem. Why does it say that? Because Moshe did exactly what God said this time. There's no way to fix the past. I also mentioned this in the previous video. There's no way to straighten something that is bent, as Shlomo HaMelech mentions in Megillat Kohelet, Ecclesiastes. There's really no way to correct what's the damage that's been done. But we can go forward and we can look forward and we can use the mistakes of the past to have a much better future, even if that future has to come to an end, as it does for Moshe Rabbeinu. And with that, we lead into Parshat Bereisheet. It's something miraculous in Parshat Bereisheet is God creates light, Vayhi Or, and He also creates darkness, Vayhi Choshech. Wait a minute. The first day is light and darkness, and then the fourth day is the celestial bodies, the sun, the moon, the stars. How is that even possible? And the answer is because spirituality was created on the first day. In order for the entire world to be created, you needed to have not just light and darkness. You needed to have good and evil. You needed to have a proper balance between things. And that is the context that sets up for the rest of the creation. We see the differentiation between the sky and the water, between the water and the land, between vegetation, between animals, male and female, between day and night, between sun and moon, right? And so that is the spirituality that is taught in Sefer Bereisheet, and it ties immediately back to Moshe Rabbeinu. My grandmother has been telling me this for years. The last letter in the entire Sefer Torah is the letter Lamed. And the first letter of the entire Torah is Bet. And that, in the Hebrew language, is the word Lev. Why? Because the Torah is the Lev, is the heart of the Jewish people. Our entire tradition, our entire lives are based in this text, are based in this divine tradition that we were given thousands of years ago by Moshe Rabbeinu. And Moshe Rabbeinu passing away teaches us the ultimate teshuvah that you can do is right before you pass away. Even if you don't necessarily want to, if you wanted to go into the land of Israel and you couldn't, you say, that is God's will and I'm going to live it. That is spirituality created in Sefer Bereisheet. The idea that we can be fully enveloped in God's greatness and glory and our internal battle with spiritual darkness. We learn this from our tradition and from the Torah, which is the heart of the Jewish people. And with that I say, Shana Tova, Shabbat Shalom, and we'll see you next week with the story of Noach and the Ark. Shabbat Shalom.